Good evening and welcome to 13 Now. I'm News 13's Amy Hoyt, and we are coming live to you from our newsroom on Harrison Avenue in downtown Panama City. We appreciate you tuning in tonight. As you know, we've been bringing you candidate forums with the election, the primary just coming around the corner in less than 3 weeks on August 23rd. And of course, early voting in Bay County at least starts next Wednesday. So you have to check with your particular county to make sure when that actual early voting date is. Tonight, we're going to introduce you to the two people who would like to be the Republican nominee for the District 2 Senate seat in the Florida Senate, of course, and that they will be replacing whoever wins, and then they have a challenger in November, a Democratic challenger. The winner will replace retiring Senator George Gaynor. At this time, we'd like to introduce you to Regina Piazza and Jay Trumbull. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to have you with us. We appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, you know the rules. When we get to the Q&A, it will be 2 minutes each. We will have a timer. Josh will be in the background yelling out cues for you, so you'll know if you've hit that 2-minute mark or not. But what we'll do is start with a 1-minute introduction from each of you, and alphabetical. Regina, you go first.
Hi, thank you so much for having us this evening, and I'm so glad that everyone is tuning in. My name is Regina Piazza, and as stated, I am your senator candidate who is the only female and veteran for the 7 counties of District 2. And there are a few things that you need to know about me, and one is that I am a Christian first, I am a constitutionalist second, and I am a conservative Republican. I'm married to Tom Piazza. I have 3 children. We home educate for 12 years. I've been a single mom, a foster mom, a 2-time business owner, and a leader within the home educating industry. And I am super excited to be here with you all this evening.
All right, thank you, Regina. And Jay Trumbull.
Hey, Amy, thank you so much for having us tonight. It's an awesome opportunity to be able to share kind of our perspective on what we think are the big issues that are dealing with Senate District 2. And, you know, over the last 8 years, I've been able to serve this community, Bay County, and the Florida House, and it's been a tremendous honor. But, you know, as I've seen things, how quickly they can change over a quick period of time, it's important, I think, to have strong leadership in Tallahassee, especially in Northwest Florida, where just a small percentage, you know, when I was in the Florida House, you're talking 6 people live in the Central Time Zone out of 120 members of the Florida House. Only 2 members live in the Central Time Zone in the Senate out of 40 members of the Senate. And so I think it's incredibly important that we make sure that there is strong leadership coming out of Northwest Florida, because it's such an incredible, amazing place to live. It's an honor to be able to be here tonight, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to put this together.
All right, thank you both. Let's begin with question 1. We'll begin with Regina, and you will have 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
Governor Ron DeSantis today suspended State Attorney Andrew Warren of the 13th Judicial Circuit due for what he called neglect of duty. This is in the Tampa area in Hillsborough County. Warren reportedly refused to enforce bans on the new abortion and transgender surgery laws, which are now law in Florida. The question is, do you agree with the governor's decision, and why? 2 minutes.
Absolutely, I do agree with the removal of that state attorney in Hillsborough, primarily because as a constitutionalist myself, that undergirds my decision making, which makes my leadership as a senator to be very easy. As a Christian, as I said, and a constitutionalist, and for Governor DeSantis to stand rightly on the Constitution of Florida, to have him removed was absolutely appropriate. He was standing up, not Governor DeSantis, but the Attorney General in that district was standing up and absolutely pushing back against that which we have established, not just we as legislators, but more so the people who elected those legislators. So for me, I would absolutely support, and I do support Governor DeSantis in his decision to remove that state attorney general or any other elected official who rubs up against the will of the people.
All right, Jay.
So I absolutely agree. I think that the governor has shown his leadership in this particular case, removing the state attorney in Hillsborough County. But this is also not the first time he's done it. You know, in 2019, he removed Scott Israel as well, who was the sheriff of Broward County after the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And I think, you know, what's important as it relates to this particular case is that elected officials or people that are supposed to enforce the laws that the legislature passed cannot pick and choose which laws they want to enforce and which laws they don't. Attorney General Moody talks about it all the time, how you wouldn't believe it, but the amount of of people, the amount of state attorneys there are across the country, but really even in Florida, that do not support the laws that the legislature has passed. And I was thankful that I was able to vote on that particular law that the legislature passed. And so I think it's incredibly important that when we see bad actors that we act, and I'm thankful that the governor was able to do that swiftly.
All right. The next question is about the property insurance crisis hitting Floridians pretty hard. I mean, we're all paying a lot of extra money. We're in the middle of a recession. It's just getting harder and harder. And I know that they held a special session to talk about this just a few months ago. Even the Demotech ratings company, which I thought there was a temporary kind of a stop agreement for them a couple of weeks ago, but they have come back yesterday, I believe, and they have downgraded a couple of companies. So, residents are kind of being left high and dry. How can we fix this crisis now? I mean, it needs to be fixed now. We can't wait another year. And Regina, we'll start with you.
Yes, as far as the insurance is concerned, to your point, there has been legislation that has come across late this spring, early summer, and it was good. It was a good start. We have our roofs not being the priority at this point. However, the reality is what has been implemented will take effect in about 14 to 18 months. So there's not immediate relief that comes with what we have accomplished or what the legislation has accomplished. So for us, what we would look to do is there has to be accountability for adjusters. There has to be accountability for the banks / mortgage holders. And what that might look like for us on the immediate would be able to take those adjusters and work in collaboration with those with the citizens to say this. One, those adjusters need to have a less of an incentive for them to come in and leave quickly. That increases our insurance. So going from perhaps the 20% rate that they earn right now down to a lesser rate. Now that coupled with the fact that they need to be in line with the timeline for the contracting that is being accomplished on these homes. In addition to the fact that the banks are not giving out the money to those citizens when they need it to get the work done that they need. So there's a threefold effect that can be in play rather soon. That is the adjusters, that is the banks coming alongside and working in tandem on a timeline that is suitable in relationship to the contractors and the work that is being done with the citizen.
I have a follow-up question for you, and this will be a 1-minute answer.
Yeah.
On your website that I checked out,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
listed your priorities, but there
Yes.
was no mention of the property insurance crisis. Is it not a priority for you?
It is absolutely a priority for me. And, as a legislator, as a senator, when I am out right now visiting with the 7 counties, and I have been all over on the 7 counties being very intentional in having these conversations, what you see listed on my website are the absolute most important priorities, the first of which is attainable housing. And that coupled with immigration and the fallout that comes along with the immigration and the porous borders. And third then would be the insurance. So it's not a 1, 2, 3 scenario for me or for the citizens. It's really a 1A, 1B, 1C. And we will work in tandem together to get that accomplished.
All right, Jay, you have 2 minutes. How are we going to fix this crisis?
Yes, so Amy, I'm very thankful that the governor called a special session. I'm actually was the sponsor of the bill in the House that tried to tackle some of that stuff. And we have heard that it's going to take 14 to 18 months potentially to see real relief. But one thing we actually did in this particular bill was we put this RAP program, the Reinsurance Assistance Program, which said that if an insurance company was to take advantage of the RAP program, that any savings that they took today had to be passed on directly to the consumer as soon as they realized those savings. But Florida has done a really great job on a whole lot of things. And what I hear often on the campaign trail is that things are becoming unaffordable, right? You made mention to it with gas prices or with inflation or whatever power costs, and insurance costs are a tremendous aspect of that. And so I think the Office of Insurance Regulation needs to do a much better job of holding these insurance companies accountable so that when we see that there are issues, we can find common denominators as it relates to those issues and root those out. Now, I will say that this is a multifaceted problem where we've seen bad actors really kind of in Central and South Florida affect our policies and our rates up here. And so one thing that we were able to do with that bill was make sure that we attack some of the attorney's fee statutes. We attacked some of those issues as it related to adjusters, and also for forced placement if you have a mortgage on your home. But the biggest thing was to not discriminate against your roof age. No one should be able to say, if your roof is 10 years old, I'm not going to write you anymore, which is why we extended it to 15 years, or if an adjuster comes in and says there's 5 years left of your roof, it could be 22, 25 years old. If somebody comes in and says your roof has 5 more years left, an insurance company cannot deny you a rate.
I've got a follow-up for you because
Sure.
you were there for the special session. Quite frankly, it doesn't seem like anything was done for the consumer. Like the consumer may have been just left out of the conversation. I don't think any of us can wait 18 months, Jay.
No, I completely agree, which is why that specific example of the reinsurance assistance program, which gave people relief today, as well as the roofs. I mean, we've heard so many times that somebody says, hey, my roof is 11 years old and my insurance company won't write me, which is ridiculous. So that's why we made sure when we were talking to the governor that we would put this 5-year exclusion in there that says if your roof, had greater than 5 years or 5 years or more life expectancy, that an insurance company couldn't discriminate against you on that. But I do think the reinsurance assistance program is one thing that will give real relief in the short term.
All right. Let's talk about the Second Amendment and gun laws. In 2018, as you know, a teenage gunman walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland and gunned down 17 people. He is currently on trial today for his sentencing. And shortly after that, Florida passed a red flag policy. It was under Governor Rick Scott. It was a piece of gun reform to take weapons out of the hands of dangerous citizens. How do you feel about those red flag laws? And Jay, we'll start with you, 2 minutes.
Sure, thanks, Amy. So, I was in the room, I was on the floor the day that the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting happened, and it was in the middle of session. And so as the families came up to talk to us about the tragedy that happened, the 17 kids that were murdered and the 17 children that were also harmed, those 34 kids, it was sad to talk to those parents, and it was a really difficult time. But I think, what we have seen is that there are, maybe some things that I don't agree with every portion of that bill. What I do agree with is that, we got rid of gun-free zones for the first time in recent history. We also put a tremendous amount of money with that law to make sure we increase school hardening to ensure the safety of our kids as they go to school. I'm a gun owner, Amy. The last thing I want is a slippery slope where my guns are removed. And the sheriffs are also those that haven't used this law very much in Northwest Florida. I think, it's never been used in Washington County as an example, but nobody wants the slippery slope and having their guns taken away. I'm thankful that all 7 sheriffs in the 7 communities and counties in Senate District 2 have decided to endorse my campaign. And, Governor DeSantis doesn't want his guns taken away. And he's also endorsed me in my campaign. So I do think that there's some things that we can work on as it relates to that bill. But as it relates to the funding and getting rid of gun-free zones, I think is a wonderful step in making sure that our kids are safe every day.
All right, Regina, how do you feel about the red flag law?
The way I feel about it as a constitutional carry, or actually as a concealed carry myself, my husband carries, my children all shoot. We are a military family. We've been 22-year Air Force, my husband and myself, as well as a veteran, as a plumber and heavy equipment operator, and an expert marksman in the military. I can tell you with absolute certainty that I will work to repeal the red flag law and the risk protection orders that are in place at this point. I can also tell you adamantly that I will support constitutional carry. And why is that? Is because as of the end of May of this year, there are approximately 9,000 risk protection orders that have come across in the state of Florida. In fact, Governor DeSantis himself had said that had he been the governor at that time, he would have vetoed the red flag law, the risk protection order. So I do stand by my governor in that same methodology, because once we start taking away our weapons weapons for any reason whatsoever, then we are also taking away our Fourth Amendment, our Fifth Amendment, and our 15th Amendment. That leaves us in utter chaos without any kind of protection whatsoever. And again, as a military veteran myself, and our family absolutely cares for special operators that are active duty right now, we are in the midst of a crisis with them. I have a personal relationship with one gentleman who is in this situation right now, and someone on my campaign has a friend who is also in this situation. We will not be beholden to a law that is against our constitutional rights.
All right, on the issue of education, when the HB 1557 Parental Rights Bill passed, banning teachers in kindergarten through third grade from talking about sexual orientation, it was controversial. But yesterday we learned that in Bay District schools, which is of course a part of District 2, they are interpreting the law to include language that's going to affect teachers of every grade. And they went so far as to produce a video to explain, like to high school teachers, how they should handle an LGBTQ question or conversation with a teenager. Do you support that new law? And were you aware that there's a caveat in it that might reflect higher grades, Regina?
I am a home educator. I grew up in the public school system. What you see here is not what I grew up in. My parents were very adamant about the way that we grew up and were disciplinarians in our home, and they made it very clear to our school system that we would be disciplined if we were disciplined at school as well. You know, part of the conversation that we are under right now is that we have removed our moral undergirding in such a way that we no longer are able to discipline, and that means to teach and to train up one another any longer. So here we are having a conversation about LGBTQ and any other sexual preference that you have in a school setting, which is to be determined by the parents. They are the ones who have been gifted with those children. They are the ones who are trained, gifted to train them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Not me, not the school district, that is for sure. We will not take any further indoctrination in our schools with our children. It is utter chaos at this point, and we will not be teaching sexuality of any sort to any elementary school, whether it's in Bay County or Calhoun or Okaloosa or Walton. It is it's an aberration at this point. So no, I stand unapologetic, no indoctrination of any sort, no funding by Planned Parenthood that backs up HHS that gets into our schools to teach our children what the parents should be teaching instead. That's not their place.
All right, thank you. Jay, you were there for this vote. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
Oh, I supported it wholeheartedly. I believe that these decisions or these conversations need to happen at home. I have a 5-year-old, and I couldn't imagine her going to school and having somebody talk to her about this. The bill specifically talks about K through 3. I believe that the Bay District Schools is probably misinterpreting this bill, but I think that regardless, these decisions and these conversations need to be had at home and not one that need to be had in the classroom. And so I wholeheartedly support the bill. Joe Harding, who was the bill sponsor, took a lot of grief for the bill. But, it's important that we stand up for what is right in Florida, and we stand up for parents. It's amazing what you can see in some of these libraries and in some of these schools across the state. It would blow your mind, some of the things that are in there and what they talk about. And so the fact that we were able to say no and stand up very unapologetically and say no, that these decisions and these conversations need to be had at home and not in the classroom is something I was very proud to support.
But it's going to come up in the classroom, and that's probably why they're taking a look at making sure teachers react properly, send the student to a guidance counselor, call the parent. There were different guidelines that they had put out. Is it surprising you that they're worried about it at a higher level?
So I think that I don't think training is a bad thing, Amy. I think that if that was what the product was that they were talking about, totally fine with that as far as, hey, if this comes up, How do you react? And I think that's a good thing, but I don't want that to get away from the point, which is these conversations need to happen at home rather than a teacher having those conversations with a student. And that's the same kind of effect that the legislature took with CRT.
You know, it's very fascinating to have these kind of conversations within the classroom. What we are seeing around District 2 at this point is something that's actually very detrimental, and that is many students are not even coming back to school. In Calhoun County, they are looking at perhaps shutting down one of their schools, elementary schools for that sake, for these very reasons. Right? Also in Jackson County, in Caryville, they are looking to shut down their high school there for these very reasons. We have got to come back to the basics and teach our students and our parents how to think, not what to think. The training has to stay there. That is why people are pulling their children from the school, and then we're going to be in a world of hurt.
Understanding, Regina, that you homeschool your children?
I do.
You do?
I do.
But you have to deal, if you're elected, with public education on a state level.
Yes.
Does that kind of not remove you from the process since you have no experience in the public school system?
Oh, I have plenty of experience in the public school.
But
I myself
with your children.
am publicly educated. Our oldest daughter was in public schools in a variety of locations as we traveled through the military for 22 years. So we are no stranger to that. The other thing that just because I home educate doesn't mean I'm locked in the door in the house with my children all day long. In fact, I'm a leader within the home educating industry, and I'm #1 in the nation for that. And what that means and how that pertains to the school system is that I am actively engaged with those families to train them up, equip them, and encourage them to be the best educator that they possibly can, whether they are at home or at a charter school or in a public school. In fact, I have come alongside Destin High School and supported them and sponsored them as a home educating family. So I am more concerned with the citizens of District 2 as a whole, as opposed to isolationist as a home educator.
All right, thank you. Well, Florida has term limits for statewide elected leaders, and Jay, you're termed out in the District 6 seat, obviously, and that's why you're running for Senate. But this year, the legislature voted to impose term limits on local school board members, 3 4-year terms. There will be 12 for them. Do you believe that was appropriate to make that decision at a local level?
Yes, I do. I mean, I believe that, honestly, D.C. could take a page out of Florida's playbook and impose term limits on congressional candidates. I mean, the reality is that we see a lot of folks that just become entrenched in the process. And I think that term limits are one of those things that should happen. You know, I give a quick example of the state of New York, which does not have term limits for their legislature. Their budget is $200+ billion. They have 21 million people. Florida's budget is $100 million with 22 million. $100 billion with 22 million people. So I attribute that to the fact that this is a part-time legislature. School board members have a part-time job. This should be something that should have term limits associated with them. I think it breeds a better candidate. I think it breeds a better democracy. And I really believe that term limits should be imposed on pretty much every facet of government.
Regina, do you agree that the state should have imposed term limits for local school board members?
Indeed, I do. I do approve that, and here's a couple reasons why. The main reason why is because of finances. You know, as I go around the district, I keep hearing over and over again that school boards are paid an incentive for their retirement, and it's taken the top 5 greatest financial pay for them. And what happens is that they are then given a retirement on that top 5 that they have been paid throughout their time as an administrator or teacher. There is therefore another incentive on top of that. For every term that you sit as a school board, then you get a percentage of that. So the longer you stay, the more percentage you get on that top 5. That does not breed the want and the desire for the constituents or for the students, but rather for self-gratification. The same holds true within political office, whether it be for Senate or House of Representatives. I see in the Political Action Committee funds that one year, the first year you're there, then you have a little bit that's brought in, and as the years go on in those 8 years, there's more and more and more that is provided. So it begs the question, who are you representing and why? And what is the motivation behind your decision making? So term limits for me are an absolute yes.
All right. The military is, pardon me, a large part of District 2. Bay County, of course, has Tyndall Air Force Base, the Navy base, the Coast Guard. Okaloosa County has Eglin Air Force Base. If elected, what will you do to ensure the safety and success of these installations? And Regina, we'll start with you.
So the safety of these installations requires exceeding innovation and collaboration, not just myself with those installation commanders, of which I had already started having conversations with, but also within the community at large. Having been a veteran myself, again, the reality is when you come to a new duty station, you dive deep and you dive hard and you dive fast, and that is to build relationships. And that is one of the greatest benefits that I bring to the table, is the collaboration and the innovation and the relationship development to ensure that our military presence here along the Panhandle remains for us. We are the largest provider with over 11 installations in District 2 alone. That in Okaloosa County translates into the 2/3 of our finances in Okaloosa County come from our military. So it's imperative that I am with them relationally and developing within the community together. And furthermore, here in Bay County and further, it is imperative that we keep them up and running and keep the phases that we have already started on Tyndall moving forward. That creates more jobs. It gives us the opportunity to woo some of the greatest leaders and thinkers within the United States to keep us free.
All right, thank you. All right, Jay, what are you going to do to make sure our installations, and there are so many, are successful?
For sure. So, I a couple years ago sat on the Florida Defense Support Task Force, and our main goal when I chaired that committee was to make sure that Florida continued to be military and veteran friendly. I think one of the most utilized areas in the country is the Gulf Test Range, which is this portion of the Gulf of Mexico off of our coast that the military uses on a daily basis to test their equipment, to fly, to shoot drones, whatever they may be doing. And the thing that I think is the most important thing that we can do is to preserve that. That Gulf Test Range is unlike anything else in the world, and the only thing that would hurt the Gulf Test Range is if we had offshore drilling. And so my goal is to make sure that we do everything in our state to keep offshore drilling from happening and ensure the sanctity of that Gulf Test Range, to make sure that the longevity and the reliability of that stays ensured, and that these installations are just a place that continue to stay around for years and years and years. 33% of Tyndall's, 33% of Bay County's economy is attributable to Tyndall, and I think you can see that a lot through the 7 counties in Senate District 2 and through the rest of the Panhandle. And so my goal is to make sure that we prop them up the best we possibly can and do everything in our power to ensure their success.
All right, how do you feel about the Gulf Test Range? Regina?
One of the things that is super duper important for us is that we maintain our a strong weapons force and strong weapons development. And what's exciting about not just the Panama City Bay County area and the Gulf Test Range, but is along the entire District 2 Emerald Coast, and that is that we have, through congressional approval, gone from 100 feet from shore out to 400 feet from shore. So the exciting part is we are advocating, and I will continue to advocate for that, because that is who our family is, and that is who we currently support, are our special operators that defend our nation so freely.
All right, well, we've hit the 30-minute mark, but with your permission, I'd like to ask you a few more questions.
Certainly.
Sure. Everybody's,
yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. A quick question about your campaigns. How much money have you raised in your campaign so far? Who's your biggest donor? There's a perception that when a candidate is financed by big companies or really rich people, that they will be beholden to that person or corporation after being elected. So, Jay, do you know how much money is in your campaign fund?
So I don't know the full amount, Amy, but you know, you can only give $1,000. That's the cap.
The total?
I think it's a couple $100,000. But you know what I think is encouraging is that as I've served my last 8 years in the Florida House, and you know really have had some tremendous successes, and really the one of the biggest things that I think I could call a success is what we fought for after Hurricane Michael, and to see how amazing it was to be able to go to Tallahassee, and all those people that were here, that were coming over from Panama City to go to Tallahassee to tell our story, and us to get real relief was a tremendous story. But you know, you asked the question, are you going to be beholden? And I think the best answer to that question is Disney World. You know, Disney is a big contributor to political races across the country and really in Florida. But the best example of will somebody be beholden, you hear a lot of people talk the talk, but do they really walk the walk? And I'm proud to say that I have truly walked the walk, where, you know, Disney has given to my campaign in the past, but I stood up boldly to make sure that we did not give them any incentives or economic advantages, and we took away Reedy Creek, which was not an easy thing to do. Big businesses don't just lay down and say, kick me a little bit more. If anything, the legislature ramped up during that time period, and I was very proud to be in the room and on the floor and vote for that in a special session a few months ago to make sure that we stood up and said, hey, woke businesses, we're not going to let you indoctrinate and impose these ridiculous opinions on Floridians. And so I will absolutely, if somebody wants to invest in my campaign, I absolutely welcome it, but I would never, ever do anything for a pay for play or do something that they would require something in return.
Regina, how much money is in your campaign? Do you know who your donors are? And how will we know that you won't do any backroom deals?
Well, you will absolutely know that we are for the mamas and the papas, is what I say, and that we are a representative. I am a representative for the people, with the people together, and you can see that reflected in my finances. I believe I probably have about $14,000 to $16,000 in my account, give or take, because I do not keep a complete eye on that. But nonetheless, the point is that was by design when we started, because I said I wanted this to be a campaign that was truly for you, with you, together, united, and representing one another. And that is what we have done. The maximum allowed is $1,000 per person, per household, and per business. Now, for me, I do not have any political action committees. My opponent has Florida Panhandle Prosperity, of which there is over $1 million in that political action committee. And so it begs the question, as we move forward, why all of the developers in there? Why are all the majority of those from outside of our district, where for me all of our finances come from within our district, with the exception of a few that are from my family personally. So we are super thrilled to participate with you, to not only to be your voice, but to be a republic again and be empowered by the citizens and no one else.
All right, at this point, I just kind of want you to ask each other a question. Jay, I'm going to let you go first, but it's a quick 30 seconds for an answer.
I'll be super easy, Regina. What do you think is the most unique thing about Senate District 2?
The most unique thing is the varied topography and therefore the demographic in that topography. It is so fascinatingly awesome to go from the south of our district, where it's just teeming with all kinds of interaction and life, and you go up north to the agriculture, which is a heart of my heart also, because that's kind of how I grew up in my later high school years, and just to feel like you're super home. And in the words of Dory, in the words of Dory, a fish can breathe up there. So I love that.
All right, Regina, you have a question for Jay?
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food, which, by the way, I completely agree. This is one of the most unique places to live, Northwest Florida is. But I think my favorite food is fried fish, and it kind of doesn't matter what it is.
You're both Republicans, both conservatives, seem to agree mostly on the key issues. Tell us what makes you stand out from each other and why you're the best candidate to beat the Democratic challenger in November, a woman from Walton County named Carolyn Zonia. Mm-hmm. I've lost count of who went first. Regina,
I don't mind
we'll let
going.
you go first.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the greatest distinctives for me as a conservative is when I look at the definition of conserve or conservative, it means to protect and to preserve. And that is something that I have really done all of my life as a public servant. From being a single mom and being a foster mom, I have been preserving life. From being in the home educating industry and training up and equipping and inspiring and encouraging families to be the best that they possibly can, I'm serving. And so for me, I am innovative and I am full of strategic development. I tell people that my brain works in whiteboards. And so the relationship piece that I bring to the table also is extraordinary because that's all I've ever known. And so as a veteran and one who is in the trenches, even right now with the active duty military and the veterans, and my mother was an Army veteran as well with a lot of mental health issues. There is not much I have not seen. I grew up in a predominantly underserved and underprivileged area in Illinois, and like I mentioned earlier, in a agricultural area in Kentucky as a high schooler. So I am broad, I am deep, I am wide, and I have the ability to come alongside and represent a unified District 2 that goes purposely with ideas and shares experiences in pursuit of our God-given rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness together.
Jay, what makes you the better Republican candidate?
So, Amy, you know, I think I'm uniquely qualified because of the last 8 years, I think is a really good example of how I am qualified for this job. You know, coming from Northwest Florida, it's not an easy thing to rise through the ranks, right? So, you know, I'm like I always said earlier, there's 6 people in the Florida House that live in the Central Time Zone. I was able to rise to the number 2 spot in the Florida House and chair the Full Appropriations Committee, which is like the checkbook for the Florida House of the state of Florida. And so, you know, I do think that I've been able to see how this process works and see how important it is to have strong leadership from an area that has all too often seen where resources and policy decisions are happening south of us and east of us. And so my goal is to make sure that when we go to Tallahassee, that we truly fight for Northwest Florida's way of life, that we fight for the much needed resources like those Hurricane Michael resources that, you know, we still see communities today in Senate District 2, whether that's in Jackson or Bay or Calhoun or Washington County, that are feeling the effects of Hurricane Michael still. And so my goal is to continue to do that and tell our story. And I think that, you know, it's a wonderful position for me to be able to be in, to be able to have the relationships and be somebody that can rise through the ranks and be in leadership in Tallahassee and the Senate as well, to make sure that that policy decisions are happening over here rather than in Broward County, as an example.
All right. Well, I thank you both for your time tonight. We appreciate you so much for coming out and answering all of our questions. Regina Piazza, Jay Trumbull. They're running for District 2. They want to be your next state senator. Again, this is the Republican primary, August 23rd. Early voting starts next week. And then they will face a challenger in November, whoever the winner of this race is. So we invite you to get out and vote, double check, call your supervisor of elections, and make sure you know where you're heading to the polls so you're in the right place. Again, thank you both for being with us tonight.
Amy.
Thank you.
And thank you for
having
watching.
us. Yes,
We'll see you
thank
next time.
Thank y'all.
We are the believers. We are the hope keepers.